Welcome to the Chocolate Box Presents. I am your guest host today, filling in for the Chocolate Drop. My name is Akeem Anderson. We are making this guest episode today because our topic is so important and so prescient to what's going on in the world today. Today our topic is a day in the life of a Palestinian. And we have a member of the Palestinian community with us today, Mr. Khalid Hijazi.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
And welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Really, I really appreciate your inviting me to your show. I am hoping that I will be able to shed some light on what is taking place in the Gaza Strip and in Palestine.
Absolutely. And you know, as we see through the news and through things that we hear, there's news coming out of Gaza, there's news coming out of Israel that may be different from the things that we're hearing here in America. And we know that, you know, certain things can be framed a certain way for us to feel a certain way about it. But it's good to know, just from someone who's in those shoes and lives that life and has family, what that may look like, to get a real life view of what it's like to be someone from Palestine.
Yes. Yeah, first, I would say I'll give you just a little information about myself.
Absolutely.
So I am a Palestinian refugee. My parents, we are from a city called Nablus. It's right in the center of historic Palestine. In 1948, after 1948, it became known as the West Bank because it is on the west side of the Jordan River. In 1967, Israel invaded the West Bank, and as a result, my family were expelled, along with many other families from my town. So we took refuge in Jordan, which is on the east side of the Jordan River. And I was born there in Jordan as a refugee. And then I came here to the United States back in 1987, here to Charlotte, went to school. And I have been living here ever since. Now, how do I feel about the situation there? Of course, it breaks my heart, knowing the number of Palestinians who are being killed in the Gaza Strip. But before I talk about Palestine and we talk about the issue, maybe I should give some context. And the best way to give, for me to give context is to show you a map. I have a book 100%. With me here. And this is a great book. It is the name of the book is All That Remains, and it's written by a historian named Khalid Hijazi. And it talks about this book talks about all the towns and cities that were in historic Palestine, how they were before 1948, and what became of them after Palestinians were kicked out of Palestine. So when we talk about myself as a Palestinian, I will show you a map here. So this map here, if you see, this map is the map of historic Palestine. And I keep saying historic Palestine because today it doesn't exist as Palestine anymore. But before 1948, this area in pink used to be referred to as Palestine. And there is more, but like a triangle part here, but it's not shown in the book. But there is like more, about 15% is missing, from the page. So this land here, in 1948, Israel occupied most of it, except for this part here. If you see this part, this tiny part, this part here is the Gaza Strip.
That is the Gaza Strip.
So the Gaza Strip is a tiny strip of land that is 1% of historic Palestine. It is 5 miles by 25 miles, 5 miles wide by 25 miles long. And the other part, this part here, if you see, this is 21% of Palestine. This is the West Bank. Okay, and this is where I am from. I'm from a city called Nablus here. So just to real quick, historic Palestine, on the east is the country of Jordan, on the north is Lebanon, and the northeast is Syria, part, in here, and the south, and the west is the Mediterranean Sea, and the south is Egypt, the Sinai desert and Egypt. So yeah, so that's for the. So when we talk about now, so we are going to be talking about what is taking place now is in the Gaza Strip.
Is in the Gaza Strip.
So on October 7th, when you heard about the incursion
Yes.
by Palestinians, was from the north of the Gaza Strip, this area. Okay, so this is.
Let me
Yeah.
ask you a question concerning the map.
Yeah.
So there is also talk, like you mentioned, there was a war where the Palestinians lost even more ground.
Yes.
So there's a talk about the two-state solution.
Right.
So when someone speaks of the two-state solution, how much of that map would belong to Palestine in that case?
Right, yeah. So the two-state solution basically is for Israel to withdraw to the pre-1967 war.
Okay.
Before 1967, Israel was occupying all of that part except the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, which are 22% of Palestine. So the two-state solution is for Palestinians to establish their country on 22% of their historic Palestine, and for Israel to remain, you know.
Yes.
So this is the two-state solution. Yeah. So if so now we go back to history.
Yes,
just real quick. So how did this problem started? So basically, let's say 120 years ago, the percentage of Jews who lived in Palestine was less than 1%. Jews in all over the world, let's say 150 years ago, never desired to physically go and live in what is called the Holy Land.
Yeah.
But this started, or this changed, by a group of people in Europe. They were secular, revisionist, pro-communist thinkers, such as Theodor Herzl, Max Warda, Xavier Jablonski, and others. So basically, a group of Jewish intellectuals in Europe started thinking of having a home for themselves. They were inspired by three main factors in Europe. They were inspired by the idea of nationalism. You know, in the late 19th century, this idea of nationalism started becoming something big. Like, you know, each, people started like, people who look like each other or have things in common in history, started forming their own nations. So they were inspired by this idea of nationalism and inspired by the idea of colonialism. Colonialism in the 19th century was like the trend of the day. You know, like Europeans in the 1870 met in Germany, and if you've ever seen like the map of Africa, and it's like the grab of Africa.
Yes.
Where like each European country wanted to take a part, in Africa. So they were priding themselves in actually colonizing other countries. So they wanted, in this case, now they were thinking like, we want to have a nation for the Jews, and we want to colonize a land, and also Jews in Europe were being persecuted. There were some pogroms and others against Jews in Europe, in Eastern Europe, in Southwest Russia, in France, and so all of these things, like, we want to have a land, but where, So at that time, this Zionism, you probably hear about, like, Zionists, we say Zionist Jews. So political Zionism was created during that time, where Jews started to view themselves from a national perspective, not a religious. That, they reinterpreted the Torah for the first time from a national perspective, So they started seeing themselves as physically and racially as a people from the Holy Land, which, Palestine, and that the German Jews actually should go back to that area. So this idea of political Zionism, where Jews must go back to their homeland, was created. It has no basis in history. Before political Zionism, there was mystical or spiritual Zionism, where a Jew in Iraq, for instance, or in Yemen, or in Syria, will say, like, at the dinner table next year in Jerusalem, but they would say it in a metaphysical sense, not like I want to go there,
Okay,
you know, in
okay.
in a mystical way, you know. So at the time, Britain and France were eyeing the Middle East. The Middle East, and if you know, like when I say the Middle
So,
East, is the area between almost like the northwest of Africa, like the areas of Algeria, Libya, Tunisia, Egypt, and then southwest Asia, like Palestine, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, the Saudi Arabia, Iraq, you know, all of this area was under the control of the Ottomans. But the
okay.
Ottomans were at the end of their empire, and
Yes,
maybe I'm talking
I
too
do
much. You
remember
probably,
the Ottoman
yeah.
Empire and history
So
class.
there
Yeah.
was like, okay, when the Ottomans fall down, who is going to take this area? Who is going to colonize it? Who is going to take advantage of all the resources? Like you know how Europeans, when they were
Yeah.
colonizing Africa, they did it to
To
take advantage.
of
You
those
know, yeah.
resources.
So yeah,
Absolutely.
expropriate.
For
You know, and to
many years.
exploit the people, and you know.
Yeah.
So who's going to do that? So the British and the French were eyeing the Middle East, and when they noticed the interest also of the political Zionist Jews, they colluded with each other. You know, so Britain in 1916, with the help of the King Hussein bin Ali of Mecca, defeated the Ottomans. And when they defeated the Ottomans, they divided the whole land amongst themselves, the British and the French. And they created countries that was not like new boundaries, like the boundaries of Palestine, the boundaries of Jordan, the boundaries of Syria, the boundaries of Lebanon and Iraq. Okay? And the British decided to give Palestine to the Jews. So this is how it started.
So, I guess like my first question is someone who learned the history in history class, but as something that's a living, breathing thing, I guess my first question would be why Palestine, as opposed to anywhere
That's a
else
very good
in
question.
the Middle East.
Yeah.
Like why Palestine?
Yeah. So initially, the political Zionist founders were thinking of Uganda in Africa, Cyprus, the island of Cyprus, or an area in Argentina. Palestine, it did give a good, provide a good opportunity, because also there is something called Christian Zionism. Christians before that, Christian Zionists, were thinking that in order for their rapture to take place in apocalypse, the Jews have to return to the Holy Land. So there was encouragement also
Oh,
by
there was
the
like a
Christian,
groundswell.
that you should go back to your place. They wanted that to happen, the Christian Zionists. So the Messiah will come, and the whole idea, the rapture, Armageddon, all of that.
Yes.
So this will not happen before the Jews live in. That's what it says. This is from their perspective. That doesn't mean I agree with it, but this is how they read it. Christian
This is how
Zionists,
they interpreted it.
So that's how they chose Palestine. Palestine fell under the British mandate, along with Jordan and Iraq. And the British, right after they took control of Palestine, they issued the Balfour Declaration. Okay, and the Balfour Declaration by a man, the foreign minister of Britain, wrote a promise letter to David Rothschild, I think, or someone Rothschild, who was a leader from the Jewish community in Europe, promising him a land in Palestine. And that he will work, him and along with the British government, in order to facilitate this mission, giving a land from Palestine to the Jewish people. And so that's how it started. So when the British came, occupied Palestine, right away they started making it easier for the European Jews to migrate to Palestine. They made a quota, they increased the quota, for how many immigrants can come to Palestine from outside. They made it, I don't know the number, maybe 10,000 can come a year, or 20,000 people. So in a matter of, from 1917 to 1948, the number of Jews in Palestine, they became 1/3 of the population. From
Wow.
less than
In
one,
that short period of
from less
time.
than 1% in 1870 to about 1/3 of the population.
Wow.
Yeah, and heavily equipped, armed, and all of that. And then in 1947, Britain almost gave up. It's like, okay, now I'm going to hand it to you. I'm almost like, I'm going to leave it. So the United Nations intervened, and they proposed to divide Palestine amongst the Jews and the Palestinians.
Yes.
And actually, I have it here, this map here. So you see, so this is historic Palestine, the whole thing. This gray area was the area that the United Nations proposed to give to the Palestinian people.
And what percentage? Because you said you mentioned
But the Palestinian people, were 70%, but they were given 45%.
45%.
Of course, like, a person who's from a city called Haifa is not going to accept that, or any other place, because they are the natives of the land.
Yes.
So Palestinians, did not accept that. Where we know that they're not going to accept, and we don't because they wanted the whole land. They don't want to settle only. And as a proof to that, what happened after? I think it was on November 2nd of 1947, or November another day. I don't know. Maybe I think November 2nd. So right after, actually, it does say that November 29th of 1947.
Okay.
So right after that, the Jewish gangs, at that time there was the state of Israel. Israel had not been formed. The Jewish gangs started launching attacks on the areas that were allotted for the Arabs, like these areas here. So like the city of Acre, Tabariyas, Bisan, areas here, oust them, expelling them. Okay. They kept doing that until May 16th of 1948.
Wow.
And by that time, there were already about 400,000 Palestinian refugees or displaced who were kicked out of their homes. May 16th, the state of Israel was declared. Arab armies like from Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon entered the war. They lost, and they lost more land from their allotted land, up to like what we saw, except for the West Bank and the Gaza Strip.
And that was 1948.
Yeah. In 1967, Israel occupied the remaining part.
What we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with the Chocolate Box Presents. And like I said, we're speaking with Khalid Hijazi, and we'll be back in just a moment to continue on from 1948 to understand what's happening in the present day. We'll be back in just a moment.
Hey, this is Chocolate Drop with the Chocolate Box Presents and
Tia Capers of My Sankofa Table.
And we want to encourage you to tune into both our programs. The Chocolate Box comes on every Tuesday at 12 noon and then again at 9 p.m. And what about My Sankofa Table?
My Sankofa Table airs every second and fourth Saturday of the month, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
On Spectrum Cable Channel 21 and AT&T Uverse Channel 99. So you never know what you're going to get.
Nope.
You can watch the Chocolate Box Presents or
My Sankofa Table. What else?
and everyone is welcome at the table.
Absolutely.
Hope to see you there.
See you there. Bye.
When I'm in Charlotte, I tune into the Chocolate Box. We back, revved up. Let's go.
All right. Welcome back to the Chocolate Drop Presents. My name is Akeem Anderson, your substitute host today, and I am back with Khalid Hijazi. And Khalid was kind enough to share the history of Palestine and Israel with us in our previous segment, and we're back to talk about Palestine and Israel today and the challenges that Palestine is facing today. So
It's a lot of information. I apologize.
No, it is perfectly fine. But as far as those challenges today, what I would like to know is, I guess we know how we got to the starting point, but even the actors and the players today. So we understand that that small area of the Gaza Strip is filled with, do you know approximately how many Palestinians?
2.3 million Palestinians. This is like a 5 mile by 24 miles.
By a 24 mile radius. Wow.
Yeah.
And we also know through the news that there's aid trucks and
Yeah,
different things where Israel controls the food supply, Israel
Yeah.
controls the power, Israel controls basically their day-to-day lives.
Yeah.
How is that? Like, what
Yeah.
do you feel about that? Like,
Yeah, so basically, after, you have the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. The Gaza Strip has been, in a way, Israel used to have settlements in the Gaza Strip. They withdrew these settlements in 2005. In 2007, Hamas won the elections. So they took control of Israel, of the Gaza Strip. Israel, to punish Hamas, imposed a siege on Gaza. One thing, the people in Gaza, the 80% of them are refugees, actually. Refugees from their
other
land.
parts
Before
of
1948, they used to
the
live.
former
Yeah, so
Palestine.
80% of them are refugees. Situation is so dire. For the past 15 years, Gaza has been under siege. Only 2 gates in Gaza. There is one that takes you to Israel and one to Egypt. Other than this, Palestinians in Gaza cannot, on their own, freely travel. They will have to gain permission for them to enter Israel or to leave out of Gaza. And also food, Israel will send, will allow food in, not a lot of food, actually measuring even the calories, how many every Palestinian requires. About 80% of the water is not suitable for drinking, controls electricity. Anytime, under its mercy, anytime it can stop it. Like now, since October 7, people have been living there with no food, no water, no electricity, no medical supplies. Yeah.
Now that brings me into, I guess, Hamas.
Yeah.
So, in certain, like, and you saw this like in the 90s in a lot of impoverished African American communities all over America.
Yeah.
There were different street gangs and like organizations that formed because these people had no resources together to try to pass out resources, or even an even worse element would try to come and take those resources from those who they felt had them in the form of street gangs. So like you have the Black Panthers who are doing positive things, and you had the street gangs who may have been doing negative things. And from an outsider looking in, it looks like a group like Hamas may have rose to power where they may not be doing the best things, but that's the only option for those impoverished people because they haven't been given that other option to come in and assist. Like, what are your thoughts on Hamas and how they have taken power?
Right, yeah. So Hamas was founded in 1987. So right after, long after 1948. In 1993, there was the Oslo Accord, where Palestinians sat on the table with the Israelis and agreeing to have peace was conditional that the Israelis will give the West Bank and the Gaza Strip back to the Palestinians. And the Palestinians will not use arms against Israelis. But what happened after, why Hamas became more radicalized in a way, that Israelis, during this peace accord time, kept taking more land from the West Bank to a point where today 70% of the West Bank that was supposed to be allotted to the Palestinians, 70% of it has already been expropriated by Israel, and illegal settlements are built on it. So a lot of Palestinian people were like, well, it looks like peace does not work, and this is how Hamas, we also want to use armed resistance against Israel. So
even with Israel's latest government, Benjamin Netanyahu, he's been described as kind of throughout his leadership moving further and further to, I guess, a harder right-wing stance. How does that affect Palestine, and how does that look, I guess, as a Palestinian from the outside, looking into this government that's already kind of pushed back so hard, getting even more of a harder line?
Yeah, it makes it worse, it makes it more. But I must say this, and this is really important. The best way to view the issue of Palestine is from a settler colonialist perspective. I mean, that it is a project of settler colonialism, in the same way how Europeans, white settlers came and colonized this country.
Yeah.
So always in any project of settler colonialism, the colonizer will never agree to live with the natives. They have to be eliminated. It's a process of elimination, because they come, they take away their culture, their history, their land, their identity, all of that, you know. So really, at the end of the day, this is what Israel is after. They are the real enemy for Israel is not really Hamas. It is the Palestinian people. Because right after October 7th, Israel has violently killed over 20,000 people, and there are about 8,000 people still under the rubble. So we're talking about 30,000 people. We're talking about close to 100,000 people injured, Palestinians, about 60% of Gaza all destroyed, about 70% of Palestinians' homes already unlivable, completely destroyed.
No.
So it is after the Palestinian, it wants to expel the Palestinian people. Yeah.
Even with that point, that puts me in the mind of a child growing up in Palestine.
Yeah.
Like, what are those, like, if I'm 8 to 10 years old, what are the things that I look to say I want to have a career at this, or this is what I want to be growing up? Are there opportunities for those young Palestinian kids to become doctors or lawyers or even diplomats to work on helping their people? Like,
Yeah, that's a very good question. You know, Palestinians love to learn, and there are a lot of good universities in the Gaza Strip and in the West Bank, and Palestinians do pursue their education, and a lot of them, you know, become doctors and engineers and lawyers and all of that. But unfortunately for them to follow and be employed, it's just like, I think in Gaza about 70% are unemployed. And can you imagine, I mean, the life of a Palestinian, you only have this small, tiny piece of land to find a job. You are not allowed to leave. You know, it's not easy. You cannot go and work in Israel, for instance. You can't even travel to the other side where Palestinians, you know, like in the West Bank, you cannot do that. So it's very grim, you know, for them. Life for them is not easy. I pray that every day that despite, you know, all of these difficult hardships that they face, that they maintain the human level or the human factor in them.
You see a lot of young Americans through TikTok and social media, and even through a rally that occurred in Charlotte today, supporting Palestine. Just one last piece, how does that make you feel as someone who's seen this for a number of years?
Actually, it makes me happy. This is it's unprecedented to see, you know, this many, the level of regular Americans are finally seeing the plight of the Palestinian people and standing in solidarity with us. My hope in the future is intersectionality. People who are marginalized, blacks in America, Latinos, women, you know, all of us, we should all come together because we have one thing in common. You know, there is this exploiter, you know, colonizer. If we unite, you know, it will make us even more powerful.
That's a powerful message, and I'm going to close on that. That message of unity. Again, my name is Akeem Anderson. I'd like to thank my guest today, Khalid Hijazi, and thank you for watching the Chocolate Box Presents. Have a great week.
Thank you.